Well, true to form, we've heard one speaker and I want to give an entirely different presentation, but I'm going to do my best to deliver what I anticipated delivering. And in fact, it's been the perfect setup in a way, because this won't be lost on you. And if you followed the press at the time around the Swift attacks, you will have sat back and you will have thought, my gosh, what do you need to know about an organisation to craft tools in an attack so specific? So specific, you know exactly how these systems are working, the protocols they are playing out, you know when you should take action, you know exactly how to take action, and you know what your best chance of hiding, and hiding long enough to walk off with a substantial amount of money will be. And what I want to talk to you about today is something I've been studying for years, which is this problem we face of the insider threat. Because it's been, for a very, very long time, people have been trying to break into our systems, much longer than it even will have been on the pages of Wired. And when I was before I was a computer science student, I was a philosophy and maths student. And I used to buy Wired magazine. And the only place I could find it was on import in a little bookshop in Camden Town. That's how old I am. And in those days, we weren't talking about cybersecurity. In fact, in those days, we probably weren't talking about information security. We were talking a little bit about computer and network security. And over the years, we've invested a whole lot of resource, intellectual resource, dollars, people's time and investment in making sure it's very hard to break into our systems. But of course, the problem we have is that you don't always have to get in through conventional means. Sometimes we're facing threats from inside. And so what do I mean by an insider threat? Well, at the very obvious way, I mean people that work for us, people that are members of our family, our small groups, employees on the books, our business partners, anyone with valid access to some part of our system that would potentially give them access to our digital infrastructure. That's in the broadest sense an insider threat. And no matter where you work, where you live, how you're operating, you will find yourselves facing some spectrum of potential for insider threat. That's today. Of course, one could argue that we're already cyborgs to a certain extent. Most of us are completely, you couldn't take away our mobile phone if you tried. And some of us will have devices already implanted under our skin for very good health reasons. And as we move into the very near future, that kind of cyborg-esque being is just going to play out and be more and more true. What does that mean for insider threat? Well, that certainly means it's not just about people anymore. We're cyborgs. It's about technology on the inside too. So we've been looking at this for a number of years. And originally we got very interested because back in the day, do you remember when cloud became hot? Right at the beginning, people were talking about clouds. And me and my team, we were worrying about, well, where should we invest our time trying to predict how the clouds are going to be attacked and how people in the clouds are going to be attacked. And our conclusion of that piece of work was this. Well, you've got to worry about the insiders, right? Because it's economies of scale. I now no longer have to hack 20, 50 organizations. I hack one cloud and I get every single person that's using that cloud. What's my easiest, most effective way of hacking any environment? Be on the inside. Be on the inside for a long period of time. Because then not only do I have the intelligence, the knowledge to go and get the highest value stuff, I have persistence, which gives me serendipity, which means I might be there for a while and I might find something that's so much more valuable to me as an attacker than what I started out going after. It's like the smash and grab on the street and the house that looked like it had nothing in it, and it turned out to belong to the most rich, powerful person in the city and had every access credential, every piece of gold, every note that they owned, the whole of their digital lives, hidden behind this building that you didn't expect to have all these riches. How big's the problem? Massive. And I actually contemplated doing some funky statistics. It's a Wired conference, and some graphs and giving you some numbers. And then I concluded, what's the point? It's all irrelevant, because what we're learning from all of the organizations we're speaking to is this. It's massively underreported. massively underreported. And actually, lots and lots of people aren't even looking for it. So there's no point. The problem is large. You look at any threat report, it will tell you the problem's growing. But remember, we only see what we look for. And we have a massive challenge in that we're not really looking that hard for it. It's often, in our experiences, and we've spoken to a lot of organizations that have faced insider attacks or cyber attacks that have some element of insider as part of them, that have never made the press, have never made it to the courts, and they've often been alerted to the presence of this threat as it plays out by customers, by partners, by people you really don't want to be the source of your intelligence when something's going wrong for you. So it's a really big challenge for us. And so what I wanted to talk to you about today is how well equipped we are and how on earth we would go about leaving this room becoming more resilient in the face of such a threat. Well, I've already hinted at the fact that we are possibly poorly equipped. It's very intuitive and natural for humans to build doors and build walls and work out how to keep people out. The consequence, though, of years of becoming very sophisticated at that is that we're like armadillos. We're very jelly on the inside. And I know you will have heard that in a lot of places. And there are some organizations, of course, who pay very close attention to the security of their personnel, the trustworthiness of their personnel, the trustworthiness of their systems on the inside. That takes a massive investment. But as we've learned in the last few years, even those organizations are not immune to very large insider threat. But one of the reasons that we're not as equipped as we should be is because we're not also dealing with the people and the technology in tandem. And in fact, if you were to go to events in the last couple of years and have heard people talk to you about insider threat, what you'll often find is that they're either talking to you from a technical perspective. I have a technical solution. I have a technical solution. I do some work on that too. Or I'm a people person. And I've been thinking very hard about the psychology of these threats and what motivates them and what would put them into a state to take action. Both of these are equally as important. And unfortunately, what we're not great at right now is planning and orchestrating across both of those platforms. So we have an issue. We're not that well equipped. What do you do about this? Well, the first thing you must do is become more mindful and learn about who you are and what you are as an organization. You cannot possibly expect to see this threat coming from the inside if you have no understanding of what it looks and feels like to be operating in a less threatening environment. Because one thing you should assume, of course, is you've already been done and you already have problems on the inside, and that is your basic premise, take it from me. I'm not saying you don't invest in firewalls and you don't invest in perimeters. You must invest in perimeters and boundaries. It's about keeping the noise down. But the real harm, the real painful stuff, the stuff that results in the 4 a.m. wake-up call, whether that's literary or metaphorical, that's the stuff that will have some element on the inside. And the most sophisticated attacks in recent times all did. So you must become more mindful. You must learn what it means to be you, what normal is. And you're going to hear about that later today. So I'm just laying the foundation. But not just technically speaking. You need to learn what Sadie does, what people like Sadie do, what we do as an organization in the London office on a Thursday or a Friday, what we do as an organization in April around the globe. And then you stretch it from there. I mean, we're talking tech, right? So you can do this at any level of abstraction. You could say, what does my file normally look like? What's its pattern of life? What's my subsystem's pattern of life? What's my building's pattern of life? How warm is it normally at this time of day? And all of this data, of course, can be correlated, and you can start sensing the abnormalities. But remember this, that not every abnormality or any change is necessarily threatening. So there's another part to the puzzle, which is this. One thing you should do is look, switch it on, and if you're in the room and you're a CTO or a leader, or you're in some senior position where you get to hold to account your security team, I strongly recommend you leave today and you ask what's being done to look for insider threat, and has that bit been switched on, because many organizations don't. But you need to think about what it means for your people in your organisation. What kind of organisation are you? What kind of culture are you? Because some of the research that we come across will tell you, for example, people under extreme forms of stress and pressure in their lives are maybe more vulnerable to coercion. And when it comes to finding yourself an insider vector, you don't always stick them in there deliberately. Sometimes you go and find them, you go and lean on them. You go and coerce people into doing something for you. And you know what? They don't need to be that well-equipped or sophisticated in the tech. We've seen examples of people going in with boxes smaller than that in size, giving them to folks to just plug a cable into the wall and then plug it into the box. And what it does, it gives remote root access to the box, to the person that actually knows how to deal with the tech. All they had to do was put the right cable in. It's as easy as that. It's not that sophisticated. And so you need to get on top of how you are, how well your people are, how the people around you are, what you can do to support each other, to build an organisation that's populated with people that are unlikely and quite resilient to acts of coercion. And this is not just your basic security awareness campaigns, although we should do those too. So it's not just, please don't click on the .exe, that happened 20 years ago, right? Nowadays we say download any app from anywhere, it's all great. But we'll have some kind of solutions like, please make sure you patch. Please make sure you use the corporate security software. That's all incredibly important. But you also need to think about the mindset of people and what position they're in. And you need to invest in that too. And so moving forward, what I would say is this. One of the biggest challenges we face, and one of the obvious sources of resilience, and it's not just in the face of insider threat, but incredibly important there, is in this question of diversity. And I don't just mean diversity as how many boys versus girls we have in our organisations. I mean at every scale. We have studied what it means for the natural world to be resilient for years, since before binary. We have studied what it means for species to be resilient for years. And if you look at this, if you look at the question of maintaining resilience in the natural world, you will also arrive at biodiversity. And what that tells you is this: monoculture is bad. It makes you predictable. And it's incredibly important if we want to become resilient in the face of any threat moving forward, but never more so than with insider threat, that we embrace the natural differences that we have access to. Think of it this way. As we move through today and you hear briefings on cyber intelligence, how bad it is, how we can scale up and predict it, remember this, that you have to spot the new stuff coming. And if you only see the world through one pair of glasses, through one lens, in one way, you won't be able to. And so when you leave here today, please consider this. Is everybody in the boardroom the same kind of person? Do they see everything the same way? Is everyone in the tech team the same kind of person? Do they all have the same backgrounds, the same education or not? Everybody in the sales team, the people that face our customers, they all the same? Chances are they are, because we're humans and we surround ourselves by people that don't challenge us. They're often the same. So one of the strongest moves you can make towards achieving resilience is to try and shake that up. Try and change the lens, because you never know who's going to discover the threat. It has to be on the front line and the back line. It has to be at the top, setting of the strategy, right down to the lowest chunks of implementation. And it all has to be different. And that comes as no surprise to the techies in the room, right? Because we've been doing moving target solutions for years. We've been trying to shake up so it makes it hard for people to predict where our vulnerabilities are technically for years. I'm just saying we need to do this inside the tech, inside the people. We have to do this at the meta level. We have to do it across our networks, and we need to do it quickly. And as we look to the future, and we do a lot of work trying to understand what the Internet of Things might mean for cybersecurity, or the cloud, or the platform as a planet in the greatest sense. One thing's for sure. Where are you going to put your walls? Where are the outsiders? Everybody's an insider in the future. They kind of already are now, but certainly in the future that we're creating, everyone's on the inside. So everyone knows exactly the protocols we're running. They know what time to do it, when to do it, what Sadie's going to be carrying, what kind of tech she's carrying, what to go talk to her about, how to turn Sadie into the platform by which you carry some nasty into the organisation. That's what we're facing. And so in conclusion, my strongest message here today is not just look for the insiders, switch it on, you have it, you're not looking hard enough. It's not just know yourself, know what normal is so you can see the change. It's remembering that not every change is bad. A lot of change is progressive and good. The world is not binary. It's not black and white. It's shades of grey and it's very colourful. And the moment we stop trying to silo ourselves, the moment we say cybersecurity isn't just about the techies, it's just not about the psychologists, it's not put up a wall, the moment we become open and willing to embrace all of this change and do as much diversity and dynamism and broad thinking when it comes to our security as we do when we set up new business models, when we go after the biggest ideas on the planet that are going to change the outcome for humanity, it's not black and white, it's not binary. And that's the best way of getting resilience. And if you can adopt that way of thinking, you won't just get resilience from insider threat, you'll get resilience in general in cyber. Thank you.
So Sadie, you talked about the insider threat in terms of the cloud. What about this world of trillions of sensors everywhere, collecting data, the Internet of Things? What about protecting ourselves against those sorts of threats?
Yeah. Well, awfully fascinating. So let's move away from the insider, because I hope I've convinced you that insider-outsider will make no sense in that future. It's just a world of stuff. Yeah. It's incredibly challenging, not least because on the one hand, you can't see this stuff. It's tiny and it's everywhere and becomes very normal and in the background. And on the other hand, it's very big and it's actually creating massive data sets around all of us that make us incredibly predictable. And you can see now why that's so hard to protect against in many ways. And so I think that one of the things we have to have our eye on is on the orchestration in the systems. So we have to pin down these devices and say, okay, I want you to deliver me a device that is free from runtime exploits. And that basically means it's written in such a way that there's no piece of code in there that is not as it should be, that I can knock over and take control of it. Assume we can do that. We can't all the time, but assume we can. What really matters is how they come together and how we understand how they're coming together, what they're collecting, what they're sharing, what they're building as a picture. And that, I think, could be very worrying for us, because if we don't try and seek to understand the meta space of knowledge and intelligence that these devices can gather, then we will really be missing a trick in terms of where these vulnerabilities will be. And they really will rise up and percolate up to the top. So we'll have people able to use these massive networks of devices, not just to do basic denial of service, distributed DDoS attacks, as we've seen in the press, but to influence us, to persuade us to behave a different way, to persuade us to behave in such a way that actually what we're doing is introducing a new vulnerability into an entirely different system, which is where you really do take down the entirety of the power grid or the entirety of the financial system. I think it's really, really fascinating. I'm an optimist. I'm incredibly excited in what this means for humanity, but I'm going to be in a job since way past when I want to retire, that's for sure.
Oh, people awesome. So I want to ask you, last question. What does a professor of cybersecurity do all day?
Oh, I know. Yeah, everyone asks that. Honestly, I'm really predictable. I run a research lab in computer science. I'm also one of the directors of the Global Cybersecurity Capacity Centre at Oxford, which is actually housed in social science, which is where we work with countries around the world on what it means for a country to be cybersecure and how we invest and what we invest in. We do a lot of work with the developing world there. I do teaching. I teach fourth-year computer scientists at the business school. We have a centre for doctoral training in cybersecurity where we bring in kids from computer science and maths and social science and people that have worked, policy, pen testers who want to broaden their minds. What do I do? Teach, research, speak, get
So
inspired.
You will be in your 6 jobs for some time. Thank you, Sadie Creese.
Pleasure.